Revenge with Karen.
The CEO spilled his coffee the day everything caught fire. Not because the numbers were off, not because of some press leak, not even because the deal tanked. He spilled it because someone finally realized the most dangerous person in the building had been sitting 5 feet away the whole time, filing quietly, keeping receipts. That someone was me. My name's Rachel, and for 5 years I was the director of compliance at a fast-rising tech company in DC. No one ever said it like that out loud. Around the office, I was regulatory ratch, or if they were being nice, the glue. You know, the type of glue executives like to smear on paper, press down hard, and pretend it was their brilliance holding things together. I handled grant audits that funded half the company's roadmap. I closed HR loopholes that could have bankrupted us in depositions. I kept the federal wolves from the door by knowing where every damn comma and signature belonged. But when it came time for champagne toasts or glossy pitch decks, you'd think I worked in janitorial support. They put me in the back, every time. Rachel's a detail person, the CFO once said, smiling like he was doing me a favor. She loves the rules, lives in the footnotes. Funny thing is, I wrote those footnotes. I bled for those rules. I knew exactly what happened when someone tried to skip them. You know what else I knew? That most people listen to these kinds of stories without ever subscribing. Wild, right? I mean, if you've made it this far, and your heart's even a little into it, hit the like button. Maybe even subscribe. It really helps the team that puts this together stay caffeinated enough to catch typos and corporate corruption before they ruin someone's life. Back to my life. At first, I believed they didn't mean any harm. We were a scrappy team building fast. My job was to be the brakes while everyone else floored the gas. But slowly, being the glue became an excuse to keep me out of the meetings that mattered, especially the merger ones. Oh, they mentioned it in passing. Some big growth opportunity, synergistic alignment, you know, the usual bingo card of tech jargon designed to make people like me nod politely while being quietly dismissed. But I started noticing things. Drafts being passed around that didn't come across my desk. Board meetings scheduled during my federal check-in calls. People going quiet when I walked into rooms. I told myself it was paranoia. I even joked with the CFO, Evan, who, I should mention, had once been more than just a work partner. Blink twice if you're planning a coup, I said over late-night drinks. He laughed, said I was irreplaceable, said, the one thing I wouldn't cut corners on. Right. Then I saw the first red flag, a Slack message with a PDF I was clearly meant to approve, but hadn't. I clicked. It was a draft of the merger framework, stripped down, cleaned up. No comment bubbles, no audit trails, and my name, not there, not even in the footnotes. Instead, I saw a placeholder, RLO signature pending. I sat there, staring at the screen like it had just slapped me. It sent it out without me. Not a final version, maybe. Not yet, but the wheels were in motion. And I wasn't just excluded, I was erased. Still, I waited, gave them a chance to loop me in. Maybe it was a mistake. Maybe some overeager associate clicked share too early. But days passed. Then a week. And Evan, the same Evan who once told me, you're the firewall between us and federal disaster, he stopped coming by my desk, stopped answering texts right away. Started working late. They'd made a choice. They were betting I'd stay quiet. They forgot what I did for a living. It started with a calendar cancellation. Weekly compliance sync gone, replaced by something called Strategic Alignment Roundtable. No invite, no explanation. I messaged Evan, hey, did the Tuesday sync get moved? 3 dots. Then silence. Next day, I walk into the bullpen early, hoping to get ahead of the week's backlog. Find legal huddled around the glass conference room. Lights off, projector humming, slides flashing keywords like integrated cap table and term harmonization. I squint. One slide reads, post-merger entity, governance flow, my section, missing. Scrubbed clean like I was some temp they forgot to offboard. I knock. No one opens the door. No one even glances up. I head back to my desk. Sit. Breathe. This isn't the first time they've gone rogue. Last time they tried that risk tolerance override stunt on the grant application, we nearly lost $6.5 million. They came crawling back then. Maybe that's what this was, early stage fumbling. Ego, miscommunication. But the silence starts to stretch. One day becomes 2. Then the daily reports stop flowing into my inbox. Budget drafts no longer request compliance sign-off. HR loops me out of contractor verifications. And Evan, suddenly on calls every time I stop by. When I catch him in the hallway and say, we need to talk about that clause in the merger term sheet, He blinks like I've spoken Swahili. Which clause? He says, adjusting his blazer. I thought legal had it. You mean the clause naming the regulatory liaison officer? That one? I don't smile when I say it. He offers that half-smirk people use when they're pretending something isn't a problem. Rachel, listen. You're brilliant. Sometimes you dig too deep. This is a big picture thing. I want to scream. Instead, I nod, so I'm not big picture. Look, the investors want smooth. You ask questions that make things less smooth. That's not a bad thing, but it's inconvenient, I finish for him. He shrugs, and for the first time I notice how comfortable he looks standing there, arms crossed, lips pursed like he's done rehearsing. It's just business. You know that. Oh, I know business. Read every clause they've buried. Every NDA they've violated. Every shortcut they've tried to normalize. That night, a hard copy lands on my desk. Binder clipped, fresh off the Xerox. An internal draft of the full merger agreement. No note, no cover sheet. Just the words, internal, for review scribbled in someone else's handwriting across the top. I flip to the governance section. Page 72, and there it is. RLO TBD. My name gone. My title gone. My initials erased like a typo. I grab a red pen. Circle the blank. Write in all caps, Director of Compliance, Rachel Thorne, currently employed, not consulted. I scan the doc. Redline the missing approval trail. Highlight every section that would require my legal authorization. Stack it neatly. I email it to legal. CC the CFO. CC Evan. Then I wait, and nothing comes back. That's when it really lands. Not just that they're trying to move around me, but that they already have. I'm not being included. I'm being replaced. Quietly, deliberately, and the worst part, they think I won't notice. They think I'll fold like some polite compliance officer who prefers red tape over red flags. They forgot that smooth is a fantasy, and I'm the one who knows where the real cracks are buried. The worst kind of betrayal isn't loud. It's silent, systematic, and disguised as progress. Thursday morning, I come in early again. My badge still works, though I notice the security kiosk doesn't light up green like it used to. Just a quiet yellow flicker, a warning, like the building knows what's coming before I do. I make coffee in the kitchen. It tastes off, bitter, like someone washed the pot but left behind the aftertaste of burnt intentions. I settle into my chair, open my laptop, and stare at my desktop for a full 60 seconds before acting, because I know what I'm about to do might be irreversible. They forgot to revoke my access. The internal M and a deal folder was supposed to be repermissioned once Phase 2 began. That was the language in the project plan. But someone in IT either got lazy or assumed I'd already been shoved into obscurity. So I click, and it opens. Root folder, Project Onyx. Real subtle. Inside, 9 subfolders. Drafts, legal, term sheets, diligence packets. Edge review. My pulse slows as my eyes scan each one. Not racing, slowing, like my body's bracing for a car crash in slow motion. I open the final docs folder. Timestamps don't match internal submission logs. Several files have duplicate names with suffixes like real final and final v3. I open the main agreement, 122 pages long. It loads slowly, like the server itself is hesitating. Page 2, approvals. There's a stamp at the bottom, signed Rachel Thorne, in italicized Arial. Not a PDF signature, not my signature, just text, like someone thought writing my name in bold made it legal. I scroll down. Page 15, RLO compliance sign-off, finalized, no date, no metadata, no embedded cert. I check the file info. Last edited by CFO, of course. They didn't just bypass me, they forged me. Only problem is they're bad at it. Sloppy, lazy, maybe even desperate. Because the embedded digital signature tag still sits blank, waiting for a real one. My actual cryptographic key, the one stored on the secure token I carry on my keychain, is the only one authorized for regulatory binding. And it's missing. Page 73, Clause 12b. All merger-related disclosures, compliance obligations, conflict of interest documentation must be reviewed and signed by the regulatory liaison officer prior to submission. Underneath that, a signature line. Blank, staring up at me like an open wound. I sit back in my chair. The office around me is waking up, keyboards clacking, Keurig hissing, someone microwaving eggs like it's not a crime against humanity. But I can't hear any of it. Just the quiet roar of confirmation in my head, submitted without me. Worse, they knew they needed me. Clause 12b wasn't decorative, it was federal law. My signature wasn't a formality, it was the legal linchpin holding the entire merger above water. Without it, it's void voidable at best, investigible at worst. I don't panic. I don't rage. I don't print copies and march into the CEO's office, waving papers like some spurned sitcom assistant. Instead, I do what I've always done. I document. I save the draft to an encrypted drive. Take screenshots of the forged signatures, the metadata trail, the folder structure. I compare timestamped versions from 3 weeks ago with the latest one. I download the changelog. Then I pull out the key fob from my purse, the one with the cryptographic token, still attached, still mine. I hold it between my thumb and forefinger, staring at it like it's the last clean thing in a filthy room. They forgot one thing: can cut someone out of meetings, strip their name off documents, and ghost their emails. But if that person still holds the only key to legality, you've built your empire on a ghost, and that ghost just woke up. The all-hands meeting was catered, of course. Piping hot breakfast burritos from that trendy fusion spot downtown, pitchers of mango-infused cucumber water, little branded folders at every seat like we were about to solve climate change, instead of rubber stamp, a corporate shell game. I took my usual spot near the back. No one asked me to move up front. No thanks for making the merger legally possible, Rachel. Just smiles that didn't reach eyes and nervous glances like I was already a ghost. The CEO, Dan, strutted up like he just won a People's Choice Award, clapped his hands, and said, "Let's hear it for Evan and the legal team, true champions in getting this merger to the finish line." Applause erupted. I clapped too, slow, polite, measured, like someone sitting at her own funeral just to hear what the eulogist gets wrong. Not one word about compliance. Not one word about Clause 12B. Not one word about the woman who'd risked her professional license to navigate 5 years of federal grants, conflict disclosures, internal investigations without a single black mark. Just Evan, beaming like a pageant mom, shaking hands like he wasn't sitting on a felony-level paperwork blunder. Then came the new org chart. Dan flipped to a slide labeled Post-Merger Integration Team. 10 bubbles. Operations, legal, tech, finance, and a little gray box tucked in the corner. Legacy compliance to be reviewed. No name, just gray, just shadow. I didn't flinch. Not when legal avoided eye contact. Not when HR's VP looked at me and immediately looked away. Not when Evan locked eyes with me for a second too long, then mouthed something I couldn't quite make out. Probably sorry, or maybe stay down. Afterward, people swarmed the burrito table. I lingered long enough to see one more nail hammered in, a junior staffer scanning badges to unlock post-meeting folders. Mine blinked yellow. Access denied. Not revoked. Ungraded, they wanted me to feel it. Wanted the quiet humiliation of being locked out of the very structure I helped build. Wanted me to realize in real time that the job was already over. They just hadn't filed the paperwork yet. That night, Evan poured me a glass of wine. We weren't together anymore, hadn't been for months, but the muscle memory of old habits dies harder than it should. I accepted it, sat across from him in my own kitchen, and waited. Looked tired, or maybe just guilty. Same mask, different label. I didn't want it to go like this, he said. But the board, they wanted velocity. You slow things down, Ratch. You mean I ask questions? He gave me that familiar patronizing smirk. Questions aren't bad, but this is timing sensitive. The investor window's tight. We needed to act. I sipped the wine. It tasted like watered-down betrayal. And forging my signature was acting? That made him flinch. Slightly. Then he exhaled. It wasn't forged. It was placeholdered. You can't placeholder a legally binding cryptographic key, Evan. He swirled his wine, avoiding eye contact now. It's just business, Ratch. Don't take it personal. Just business. Right. Like when I stayed up 46 hours straight writing our audit rebuttal. Just business. Like when I rewrote your procurement policy to stop us from getting disqualified for fraud. Just business. When I covered for your screw-up on the SEC disclosure so your bonus wouldn't get clawed back. Just business. I nodded, didn't argue, didn't yell, because I was done being the glue. Glue doesn't rage, it binds, but now I was the solvent. That night I opened my personal drive and started organizing. Not just documents, not just evidence, strategy. I listed every point of failure in their submission trail. Every clause dependent on my authorization, free contact at the Office of Regulatory Mergers. I made backups, encrypted duplicates, scheduled drafts. I didn't confront, I didn't cry, I prepared, because they hadn't just boxed me out. They'd handed me the match and soaked the floor in gasoline. I waited until Saturday, because that's when people get lazy. It's when legal forgets their second phone at the office and executives assume no one's watching. but I was watching. I'd become an expert in silence, the spaces between documents, in the metadata most of them didn't know existed. And I had one name in mind, someone I hadn't called in over a year. Cynthia Meeker. She worked at the Office of Federal Transaction Review, or OFTR if you were in the know. We'd met at a DC compliance summit where she gave a panel talk titled Signatures That Save and Sync Deals. Most people left for lunch halfway through. I took notes, asked questions, bought her coffee afterward, stayed loosely in touch, occasional emails, holiday hope you're surviving audit season jokes. Now I needed more than jokes. I encrypted the message, sent it through a personal alias, clean and professional. Need clarity on a theoretical. What happens if Clause 12b, RLO sign-off, is missing at time of submission? Asking as a private citizen, not on behalf of my employer. Cynthia replied within 20 minutes. Clause 12b is mandatory. If RLO signature is absent, we notify both parties and initiate preliminary breach review. If the submission is knowingly filed incomplete, that triggers audit escalation. Why? I didn't answer. Instead, I exhaled slowly, sat back in my chair, and started building a folder called Final Countermeasures. It contained a scanned PDF of my employment contract, specifically the addendum naming me Regulatory Liaison Officer, countersigned by both the CEO and CFO. A time-stamped, hash-verified version of the merger doc with my name missing. Screenshots of internal drive folders showing forged drafts with approval placeholders. My cryptographic key signature chain, untouched and unused in the final filing. An exported Slack log showing Evan saying Rachel slows things down. We're pushing through with or without her. A copy of Clause 12b, highlighted in 3 colors. I printed everything, stored it in a waterproof folder, then duplicated the digital version across 3 secure cloud containers, 1 USB drive, and a separate encrypted email draft with Cynthia's address in the to field, but unsent. All the traps were set. Then, as if on cue, my phone buzzed. It was Evan, working late, finalizing the merger docs. Don't wait up. No greeting, no apology. Just the smug nonchalance of a man who thought the race was over. Checkered flag already waved, and that I was still at the starting line with a clipboard and a moral compass. I stared at his message for a moment, not with rage, not even with sadness, just precision. Then I typed my reply, perfect. The regulator will love seeing the missing signature, mine, and I hit send. No emoji, no punctuation flourish. Just facts dressed in silence. I imagined his face when he read it, maybe a furrowed brow, a pause, half smirk collapsing under the realization that something was wrong, and not just wrong, but fatal. He wouldn't text back right away. He'd call Dan first, maybe legal, maybe the outside counsel he golfed with last quarter. He'd spin the wheels fast, like slamming the gas in reverse while the cliff edge crumbles. But it was too late. The signature they needed wasn't just missing, it was guarded. And the person guarding it had stopped playing nice. Subject line, missing signature mandatory Clause 12b. That's all it said. No body text, no preamble, no soapbox. Just the facts, stacked like dominoes inside a zipped folder labeled Compliance Gap Onyx Deal. Inside it, the most recent submitted version of the merger agreement. My employment contract, dated and signed, with Regulatory Liaison Officer, highlighted in yellow. A chain of drive logs showing no edits or contact from legal. Screen recording of my cryptographic token dashboard, clean, unused, untouched. Clause 12b, printed from the Federal Compliance Database, annotated. 1 line typed at the bottom of the cover page, filed without my sign-off. Timeline attached, proceed accordingly. I hit send at 6:13 a.m. Then I made eggs, fed my dog, watered the 1 houseplant I hadn't yet killed. At 8:42 a.m., Dan, our slick, buzzword-munching CEO, got a call that made him put down his protein smoothie and forget where his coffee was. The call didn't go through legal. It didn't pass through admin. It came straight from the Office of Federal Transaction Review. That's the thing about regulators. They don't knock, they appear. Cynthia, ever the professional, didn't mention me by name when she called. She didn't need to. She simply stated that a valid RLO sign-off appears to be missing from your submitted merger agreement. Need clarification within 24 hours to avoid triggering escalation per audit protocol. Dan blinked. His assistant, poor thing, thought it was a prank. Then legal got looped in. They tried to stall. Tried to say, oh, it must have been a formatting error, we'll reupload. But the regulator already had the original files. The metadata, the forged stamps, the absence of my digital signature. my employment documentation. The clause itself wasn't a formatting error, it was fraud. Meanwhile, I was on my porch with a coffee of my own, black, no sugar, watching the sky turn from bruised pink to surgical blue. Peaceful, focused. I didn't refresh my email. I didn't check for read receipts. Justice isn't a firework, it's paperwork. By 10:03 a.m., HR sent a Slack to the executive team. Please pause all external deal comms pending legal review. By 10:18 a.m., 2 interns were seen sprinting to the IT department with an urgent request to review all folder permissions for Project Onyx. By 11:02 a.m., the outside counsel retained by the board left a voicemail on my office phone. Rachel, if you have time to connect, the team would really appreciate some insight into click. Too late. The filing wasn't just invalid. It was radioactive. Any further attempts to revise it would only confirm intent. And intent, the eyes of a federal audit board, is everything. Back at headquarters, Dan was now holding an emergency board call while legal scrambled to rewrite the narrative. Evan, I imagined, was pacing in his glass office, staring at the Slack thread where I had, up until 2 weeks ago, been the only one correcting his regulatory language with a red pen. He probably wondered how long I'd known, how long I'd been planning this, how many breadcrumbs I left behind, quiet, visible, time-stamped like the clicks of a loaded gun. But here's the thing. I didn't pull the trigger. They handed me the weapon, cocked it, and left the safety off. All I did was write the report. The boardroom was booked under strategic review urgent. Translation: nobody knew whether to call legal or call their mothers. By 8:57 a.m., I'd already seen the calendar ping leaked in an internal screenshot forwarded to me by a junior compliance analyst from another floor. Subject line redacted, but the attendees: CEO, CFO, General Counsel, External Deal Counsel, Chair of the Board, no snacks listed. Not a good sign. I sat cross-legged on my couch, wearing a hoodie with a stain I stopped caring about 2 years ago, nursing my second cup of coffee like it was a front-row ticket to the fallout. The morning news droned softly from my kitchen radio, but I didn't need it. I already knew what today's top story was downtown. Inside the glass-walled boardroom of Onyx Tech HQ, Dan, the CEO, king of spin, slammed his palm on the table hard enough to rattle someone's iPad. Why wasn't this signed? He barked. The question pointed like a blade, but still, somehow, stupid. Evan, the CFO who'd been riding high off vapor and hubris for weeks, looked like a dog that wandered into traffic. Pale, clammy, blinking too much. She was never going to approve it, he muttered. Dan leaned in. So you just skipped her, you assumed? We had the draft, Evan said. It looked final. You thought, Dan hissed, face flushing purple, that omitting the one person with legal authority to validate Clause 12b was just a rounding error. Room went silent. Outside, someone's phone buzzed 3 times in a row, probably another inquiry from the regulator. Then the lawyer spoke, and what he said stopped time. If she didn't sign, the submission is invalid. It violates federal filing protocol. This triggers a federal audit. Dan dropped his coffee. Literally, ceramic mug shattered against the polished concrete floor, dark brown spreading across the industrial rug like a crime scene. No one picked it up. No one moved. Because the word audit doesn't just mean paperwork. It means subpoenas. It means frozen capital. It means investors asking if your leadership is criminally negligent or just criminal. It means headlines like merger halted over compliance breach and internal Slack messages that will end up as exhibits A through Z. Meanwhile, back in my living room, I took a slow sip and scrolled through my phone. Cynthia from Ofter had replied, received, confirmed. Thank you for your clarity and completeness. Formal notice sent to Onyx per audit procedure 3.2c. You've done the right thing. I smiled at that. You've done the right thing. It didn't feel like revenge. It felt like course correction. Like the truth finally getting oxygen after being buried alive under slide decks and smug side comments. Across town, someone in legal suggested contacting the regulator directly. Maybe we can explain, they said. Explain what? That your signature plan involved fraud and hoping I was too burned out to notice. Evan, I imagined, was now texting me, maybe some pale attempt at damage control. I didn't look. I didn't care. This wasn't personal anymore. This was math. The math of missing initials. The math of zero compliance coverage. The math of one employee holding the detonator they thought was just another paper pusher's pen. They didn't just cut me out. They cut out the keystone, weight-bearing claws holding their entire dream together. Now it was collapsing in real time, and I wasn't in the rubble. I was in the sun. I submitted my resignation at 6 a.m. sharp. No subject line flare, no emotional goodbye thread, just a one-sentence email to HR. Effective immediately, I resign my position as Director of Compliance at Onyx Tech. Attached, a formal letter. Signed, timestamped, archived. Then I stood, stretched, poured my third and final cup of coffee, like I'd just returned from war, and realized I never wanted to wear armor again. Because that's the thing about surviving fire. You don't rebuild the old house. You leave the ashes and start over with better walls. Before I logged off my laptop, I did one more thing. I reached out to Marshall Penn. Marshall was the lead compliance auditor from Jexley & Rowe, boutique firm I'd personally vetted and brought on 2 years ago to handle our Series B due diligence. He didn't work cheap, but his team was surgical. And more importantly, he respected one thing above all else: chain of authority. I didn't have to say much, just forwarded him a PDF titled Filing Discrepancies Regulatory Authorization, Chain Clause 12B. 10 minutes later, he replied, "This constitutes a breach of assurance criteria, withdrawing our compliance endorsement effective immediately." I stared at the screen. Let it sink in. That signature, Marshall's, was the last Band-Aid holding investor confidence together. His withdrawal meant the Series B was now radioactive, and like clockwork, the ripple started. By 10:17 a.m., Sable Venture Capital, a lead investor with $42M committed to post-merger expansion, sent a formal notice suspending their funding commitment pending regulatory investigation and compliance review. At 10:45, the first article dropped. Merger delayed by compliance breach. Sources say Onyx submission procedurally compromised. I didn't leak it, but I knew someone would. There's always a whistle on the floor when the wolves smell blood, and Onyx was hemorrhaging, and issued a 2-sentence internal statement by noon. We are aware of the ongoing review and are cooperating fully. We remain committed to transparency. He didn't sound committed. He sounded like a man whose yacht deposit just turned into a deposition. As for Evan, I left him one final note. I didn't text, I didn't call, I emailed, from my personal account, with a delivery receipt attached. Subject: live with the Gap body. I protected this company for 5 years. I shielded it from audits, fines, and your own shortcuts. You used me until I was inconvenient, then tried to erase me. But you forgot something. You can't erase the backbone. Now live with the Gap. Rachel, I didn't wait for a reply. Didn't care if it bounced, or if he read it while crying into his overpriced espresso machine. Because here's the quiet truth no one prints in Forbes profiles or founder bios. When the person holding the foundation walks away, the rest isn't a company. It's a collapse in waiting. And collapse doesn't negotiate. I powered down my machine, slid my badge into a drawer, and left the apartment. No destination, no plan, just fresh air and the steady pulse of freedom beating behind my ribs. Back at Onyx, they still had departments, but no leadership, no compliance sign-off, no trust, only gaps. The kind they created, the kind they thought didn't matter, until it did. 1 week later, I met him at a quiet cafe tucked behind a law office and a florist that hadn't changed its window display since Valentine's Day. No fanfare, no entourage, just a square table by the window, 2 black coffees, and a man in an expensive blazer with the look of someone who's spent the last 7 days rethinking everything. Introduced himself as Martin Gale, partner, Strategic Transactions Division, Halberd Capital. Halberd was the acquiring firm in the Onyx merger, the ones who'd nearly inherited a compliance time bomb disguised as a term sheet. The ones who, until 7 days ago, thought they were walking into a clean, fast close. They weren't. And now they knew exactly why. He didn't waste time with small talk. Slid a tan folder across the table like it held a cease and desist. Instead, it held a job offer. Title: Chief Compliance Strategist, Halberd Capital. Scope: build the post-merger governance infrastructure from scratch. Report directly to the executive board. Full autonomy. Compensation: let's just say it made 5 years of being underpaid at Onyx feel like a bad joke told at my expense. I looked up, eyebrow raised. He smiled. Rather have the woman who broke the merger help us build the next one. I didn't laugh, just nodded slowly. You don't think that's awkward? I asked, sipping my coffee. Awkward, he said, is inheriting a $200 million liability because someone thought they could outmaneuver federal compliance. You didn't blow it up. You saved us from inheriting a fraud. That's not awkward. That's indispensable. Indispensable. It hit me harder than I expected. That word wasn't shouted. It wasn't part of a press release or performance review. It was just said like fact. I took the folder, shook his hand, and left without promising anything. But I already knew what I was going to do. 3 weeks later, the boardroom looked different. Same table, same ridiculous abstract art on the walls, but the energy, different. This time, the seat at the head of the table didn't have someone else's nameplate. It had mine. No coffee spills, no lawyers whispering panicked Latin phrases. No Evan, just a dozen department heads waiting for direction. Respectfully, quietly. I looked around the room, the very room I'd once been boxed out of, talked over in, ghosted from. I straightened the folder in front of me. Let's begin with Clause 12B, I said. This time, we're going to do it right. A few people nodded. One even smiled. They knew the story. Everyone did by now. And yet, no one dared reduce it to gossip. Because the woman they thought was a speed bump, she became the road. The revenge wasn't about humiliation. It wasn't about drama. There was no shouting, no slaps, no viral clips. It was quiet, strategic, signed in ink, and best of all, it held. Because when your signature is the difference between expansion and federal inquiry, they don't forget your name again. Ever. Appreciate you sticking around, you wise old rebels. Smash that subscribe button, or this fossil might just cause another epic fiasco.